Okay, so ready to really dig into this self-care stuff.
Yeah.
Today, we're all about making it work, for people who are actually busy.
Sounds good to me.
We've got all this research, articles, the whole works. And the thing that kind of jumped out is this idea that self-care isn't like a luxury, right?
Mhm.
It's like essential.
Yeah.
One source even says that taking just like a 5-minute break can actually make you more productive. I was skeptical, honestly.
Yeah.
But then, I looked into the science and it's pretty interesting.
Well, and what's cool is the source actually breaks down the cognitive science behind it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, we think pushing through equals more output, right? More work, more done.
Right, yeah, power through.
But our brains, they just aren't built to focus constantly. There's research from the University of Illinois, and it shows that even those little quick diversions can really help your attention.
Oh, interesting.
And how accurate you are, when you're doing tasks. It's like a mini workout for your brain, to come back even stronger.
There's those 5 minutes. It's like almost hitting save before your computer crashes.
Exactly.
Okay, got it. So this whole deep dive is about finding those little things, those little wins.
Yeah, exactly. Those quick wins, but it starts with seeing self-care as a whole thing.
Right.
Holistic. It's not just bubble baths, although I do love a good bubble bath.
Who doesn't?
But it's about, really deliberately, intentionally taking care of your whole self.
Oh, I see.
Physically, mentally, and emotionally.
Okay, so it's like if one part of you is running on empty, the whole system's messed up.
Yeah, precisely. You can't separate them. Right.
Right.
And we gotta start with the basics.
Okay, like what?
Sleep, hydration.
Oh, yeah. I know,
I know it sounds so basic.
It does.
But even being a little bit dehydrated can really mess with how well you think.
Really?
There's a study in the Journal of Nutrition. It spells it out. Your brain is mostly water. So if you're running low, everything slows down.
That's a good way to think about it.
Yeah.
Like a dehydrated brain, try and think it's like, oh, what's that like? It's like trying to run a marathon in the desert.
Yeah, exactly.
Not a good idea. Not a good idea. But, okay, even when we know we need sleep, right? Life happens.
Right.
Life gets in the way.
That's where the source, gets real tactical.
Okay, good.
It's not about suddenly being a, perfect sleeper.
Right.
It's about building habits.
Oh, okay.
Even setting a bedtime, a real bedtime, and sticking to it.
Mm-hmm.
And, no screens for an hour before bed.
Yeah.
Those small changes, they can make a big difference in how well you sleep.
Oh, okay.
It's like prepping your brain for sleep, not shocking it awake with, all that blue light before bed.
So it's less about getting those perfect 8 hours and more about just being consistent.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that feels less intimidating for sure.
Right.
But I am still hung up on these mini breaks. How can just 5 minutes really make a difference?
Okay, think of it like this. Those times when you're just staring at your screen?
Oh, yeah.
But nothing is going in?
Oh, all the time.
That's your attention span, basically waving a white flag.
Got it.
And research from UC Irvine, they found that even taking a short break, like looking out the window or doing a quick stretch, can really lower your mental fatigue and you can focus better.
Oh, okay.
It's like letting your brain reset.
Got it.
Before you dive back in.
So instead of just powering through, I should schedule these breaks, even if it feels weird.
Yeah, the source actually suggests setting a timer.
Oh, wow.
If you have to break that must-work nonstop habit.
Yeah.
It's like training your brain.
Okay.
To be okay with those pauses and see them as a chance to refresh, not a distraction.
I'll admit it. I feel guilty when I take breaks. I should be working.
Right. And that's where the source is let's rethink what being productive actually means.
Okay.
What if those 5 minutes actually make you more productive overall?
Okay. Interesting.
It's a mindset shift, You're not slacking off. You're investing in your ability to actually focus and do better work.
Okay. I'm starting to get on board with this. So we talked sleep, hydration, mini breaks. What else?
Yeah.
What else is in this self-care toolkit? I see mindfulness a lot, but honestly, meditation always felt, I don't know, kind of too woo-woo for me.
I get that, and you're not alone.
Yeah.
The source is really good about this. It tackles this head on.
Okay.
And it emphasizes that mindfulness isn't about, sitting on a mountaintop and chanting.
Right.
It's about just being aware of the present moment, even in tiny little doses.
Okay, so it's less about emptying your mind and more about noticing what's already there.
Exactly.
Okay.
And the cool thing is there's actual science behind it.
Huh?
Studies show that even short mindfulness practices can lower the stress hormones.
Wow.
Yeah, and they help you, like, manage your emotions better. Think about it. When you're all caught up in your worries,
Oh, yeah.
your anxieties, you're not really present, right?
No, I don't know.
Not in your work, not in your life.
Right.
And mindfulness, it's like, it helps you hit the pause button on those mental spirals.
Okay, yeah.
And just reconnect with what's happening right here, right now.
That sounds much more doable than I thought.
All right.
We're talking like specific exercises or just like a general being aware kind of thing?
It can be both.
Okay.
The source has some really good examples. Even something as simple as, like, really paying attention to your breath can bring you back to the present moment. It's about anchoring yourself to something real instead of getting swept away by, like, every thought.
So instead of getting lost on my to-do list, I can just take a minute to breathe.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. That's something I could actually do, even at work.
And that's exactly it. It's about finding what works for you.
Right.
And fitting those little moments of mindfulness into your day.
Okay. I like it. Now, what about screen time? That's another one where I know I could use some help. The source talks about boundaries. What does that look like in real life?
All right. It's about realizing that, being connected all the time has a downside.
Yeah.
Think about what scrolling through social media right before bed does to your sleep.
Oh, worse.
That blue light, it really messes with your melatonin production.
Right, yeah.
It makes it harder to fall asleep and to stay asleep.
Oh, yeah, I've totally been there. Staring at my phone in bed and then wondering why I can't sleep.
Right.
Makes sense.
So the source isn't saying you have to, like, ditch all tech.
Right.
Unless you want to. It's more about being intentional.
Okay.
Setting boundaries that actually work for you. Maybe it's no screens after dinner or only checking email at certain times. It's about taking back your time and attention instead of letting technology, run the show.
Yeah, taking back your time. It's so easy to feel like you're at the mercy of your devices.
Right.
But we actually have the power to choose
We do.
how we use them.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
What else does the source say about setting those boundaries? Like any practical tips?
One thing that's interesting is turning off notifications for apps that aren't, like, essential.
Oh, yeah.
Think about how often some random notification pulls you away from something important.
All the time. Seriously, all the time.
Right. And most of the time it could have waited.
Totally.
And every time that happens, it takes time and energy to get back on track.
Right.
So if you limit those distractions, you're creating more mental space for the things that actually matter.
I'm realizing how much I underestimate those little digital interruptions, like death by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah.
So less scrolling, more focus on what really deserves my attention.
Got it.
Got it. What else is on this self-care menu?
Okay, this one might sound almost too simple, but the source really stresses how important it is to do something you actually enjoy every day.
Okay.
We're talking activities that bring you joy, that give you energy, that, like, nourish your soul.
So not just checking things off a to-do list, but actually doing things that make me feel, I don't know, alive.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that, emotional well-being is just as important as physical and mental health.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be some big, grand thing. It could be listening to music you love, reading a chapter in a book, spending time outside.
Oh, yeah.
Anything that helps you reconnect with yourself.
I like that a lot. Sometimes I get so stuck in that, like, get it done mindset that I forget to actually enjoy anything.
Right.
Well, what's the science behind this? Like, is there proof that doing something you enjoy is actually good for you?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Research shows that positive emotions, they have, like, a ripple effect.
Oh, wow.
They boost your resilience, your creativity, even your physical health.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, think of it as a positive feedback loop. The more you do things you love, the more you feel those good emotions.
Right.
And then those emotions, they benefit you in every area of your life.
Okay, so it's not just about feeling good in the moment.
No.
It's like setting yourself up for success later on.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a good argument for scheduling some fun into my day. But with everything else we've talked about, it just feels like a lot to add to an already packed schedule.
And that's where, like, the big message of the source comes in.
Okay.
Self-care, it's not all or nothing.
Right.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Okay, I like it.
And like any journey, it's about taking it one step at a time.
So instead of like a total life overhaul, I can focus on one or two of these things at a time.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's about finding what works for you in your life right now.
Right.
And making it a regular part of your routine. It's like building any healthy habit. It takes time, effort, and you got to experiment a little.
Right, yeah.
But the payoff is huge.
I'm realizing I've been thinking about self-care all wrong.
Hmm.
It's not about adding more stuff to my plate. It's like shifting how I think and prioritizing my well-being along with everything else.
And that's a really powerful realization.
Yeah.
It's about, realizing you're worthy of care and attention. That taking care of yourself isn't selfish, it's actually essential.
Yeah. Okay. Feeling ready to do this.
Yeah.
Before we move on, is there anything else from the source about like those basic principles of self-care?
Hmm. One thing that really stuck with me was the idea of self-compassion.
Self-compassion.
Yeah, it's about treating yourself with the same kindness that you would a friend.
Oh.
We often have these crazy high standards for ourselves,
Mhm.
and it leads to burnout and being super critical of ourselves.
Oh, yeah. I am definitely guilty of that. Like my own worst critic, for sure.
Right. But imagine if you talk to a friend the way you talk to yourself sometimes.
Ouch.
You would never,
But-
right? So why are we so hard on ourselves?
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm so much better at supporting other people than I am at supporting myself.
Right.
So how do we actually practice self-compassion? Is it just about, like, thinking positive thoughts?
It's more than that. It's about recognizing when you're being negative to yourself and then actively challenging those thoughts.
Okay.
It's about accepting your imperfections, your mistakes, without letting them define who you are.
So being more understanding and forgiving of myself, even when I, mess up.
Yeah.
Right.
And realizing that everyone makes mistakes as part of being human, the important thing is to learn from those mistakes
Right.
and move on with self-compassion instead of beating yourself up.
I love that. It takes the pressure off trying to be perfect
Yeah.
and lets us be a little gentler with ourselves. I think it's a much better way to approach self-care for the long haul.
I agree.
All right, I'm ready to dive into the actual strategies. What's next?
Okay, so the source gets into some really interesting techniques for managing stress and anxiety, but I think we should save those for the next part. Don't want to overload everyone with too much information all at once.
Good point. We'll be right back after a quick break. All right, so we're back and ready to really get into some of these self-care techniques. Before the break, we talked about the basics, sleep, hydration, those mini breaks, mindfulness. But I really want to hear more about those stress-busting strategies you mentioned.
Okay, so let's talk stress. The source has a whole bunch of techniques, but one that I thought was really interesting is active relaxation.
Active relaxation. That sounds, I don't know, kind of like a contradiction. Isn't a relaxation supposed to be about, well, relaxing?
Right. It sounds a little counterintuitive, but stick with me here. The idea is that sometimes just passively relaxing, like watching TV or, scrolling through social media, doesn't actually deal with that underlying tension or anxiety. It might distract you for a bit, but that stress is still there, under the surface.
Okay, I see. So instead of just zoning out, active relaxation is more about doing things that actually help you release that tension.
Yeah, exactly. And the source gives some great examples. Things like yoga, tai chi, even just taking a brisk walk can make a huge difference in your stress levels.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed that. Like when I'm feeling stressed, going for a walk or doing some yoga really helps me clear my head. It's like I'm physically working out the tension.
And there's a reason for that. When you get moving, your body releases endorphins,
Oh, right, yeah.
which are like natural mood boosters, and they help with pain too. Plus, those rhythmic movements and the focused breathing you do in things like yoga and tai chi, they can actually calm your nervous system down and help you shift your focus away from all those stressful thoughts.
So it's like a 2-for-1 deal. You get the physical benefits of exercise and the mental benefits of mindfulness all at the same time. Okay, I'm convinced. What other active relaxation techniques are in the source?
Another interesting one is something called progressive muscle relaxation. It's where you basically go through your body, tensing and releasing different muscle groups.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that. Doesn't it help with sleep, too?
Yes, it can be really helpful for insomnia, but it's also great for managing stress and anxiety during the day. By tensing and releasing your muscles, you're teaching your body to recognize the difference between tension and relaxation.
Okay, so it's like a reset button for your muscles. And the more you do it, the better you get at letting go of that tension.
Yeah, exactly. And the cool thing is you can do it anywhere, anytime. You don't need any special equipment or a lot of space. You can even do it at your desk.
Okay, I'm adding progressive muscle relaxation to my list. What else does the source recommend for dealing with stress?
Well, this one might seem obvious, but the source really emphasizes how important social connection is. It's easy to isolate ourselves when we're feeling stressed, but connecting with people we care about can be incredibly beneficial.
I know I tend to withdraw when I'm overwhelmed, but I have noticed that talking to a friend or family member just helps. It's like sharing the burden. Makes it lighter, you know?
And there's science to back that up. Studies have shown that social interaction releases oxytocin, a hormone that makes you feel more connected to others. It also helps lower cortisol levels, which is the stress hormone.
So it's not just about venting or getting advice. It's actually changing our brain chemistry. It's
Yeah.
wild. What about those times when you're feeling stressed, but you can't just call up a friend? Does the source have any tips for managing stress right then and there in the moment?
Yes, definitely. One technique the source highlights is called the 478 breathing technique. It's a super simple but powerful way to calm your nervous system and reduce anxiety.
Okay, I'm interested. How does it work?
It's really easy.
Yeah.
You inhale deeply through your nose for a count of 4, hold your breath for a count of 7, and then exhale slowly through your mouth for a count of 8.
Okay, that sounds pretty straightforward. What's the science behind it?
Well, by slowing down your breathing, you're sending a signal to your body that it's safe to relax. It activates what's called the parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for the rest and digest response.
So it's like a shortcut to that feeling of calm you get after a good yoga class or meditation.
Exactly. And the best part is you can do it anytime, anywhere. It's a great tool to have in your back pocket for those moments when you feel stress coming on.
I'm going to try that next time I feel overwhelmed. What other in-the-moment stress relievers does the source talk about?
Another one I find helpful is something called grounding. It's a technique that helps you reconnect with your senses and the present moment when you're feeling anxious or overwhelmed.
Grounding. I've heard of that before, but I don't think I fully get it.
It's all about bringing your attention to your physical surroundings and what you're sensing. It's a way to anchor yourself in the here and now instead of getting lost in anxious thoughts or worries.
Okay, so it's kind of like mindfulness, but focused more on your senses.
That's a good way to put it. The source suggests a really simple exercise called the 5-4-3-2-1 method. You simply name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste.
I like that. It's a simple but effective way to bring yourself back to the present. It's like a mental checklist for grounding yourself.
Exactly. And it can be surprisingly effective in shifting your focus away from those anxious thoughts and calming your nervous system down.
Okay, I'm adding the 5-4-3-2-1 method to my toolkit. What else does the source say about managing stress and anxiety?
Well, one thing the source emphasizes is the importance of figuring out your own personal stress triggers.
Yeah, that makes sense. If you know what sets you off, you can be more proactive about managing your stress.
Right. The source recommends keeping a stress journal for a week or 2. Write down how stressed you feel throughout the day and note any situations or events that trigger stress or anxiety.
So it's like being a detective for your own stress. Once you know who the culprits are, you can come up with strategies for dealing with them.
Exactly. And those strategies might involve things like avoiding certain situations altogether, setting boundaries with people, or practicing some of those relaxation techniques before or after you know you're going to encounter a trigger.
I love that. It's about being in control of your stress instead of letting it control you.
You got it. It's about realizing you have the power to choose how you respond to those stressful situations.
This is all so helpful. I feel much more equipped to deal with stress now.
That's fantastic to hear. And remember, managing stress is something you work on continuously. It's not about getting rid of stress altogether. That's pretty much impossible. It's about developing those healthy ways to cope and becoming more resilient.
Okay, so it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Exactly. And just like training for a marathon, it takes time, effort, and you got to be consistent. But the more you practice these self-care techniques, the better you'll get at managing stress and just feeling good overall.
This has been so eye-opening. I'm really feeling motivated to prioritize self-care and try out all these different techniques.
I'm so happy to hear that. Remember, self-care is not a luxury. It's an investment in your overall health and happiness.
That's a great way to put it. All right, before we wrap up, is there anything else from the source we should talk about?
You know, one thing that stood out to me is this idea that self-care isn't just about taking care of ourselves as individuals. It's also about collective well-being.
Oh, that's interesting. What do you mean by that?
Well, the source argues that when we prioritize our own self-care, we're actually in a better position to show up for other people and contribute to a more compassionate and supportive society.
Oh, I love that. It's like that oxygen mask analogy. You have to put on your own mask first before you can help anyone else.
Precisely. When we're feeling drained and stressed, it's much harder to be present, patient, and understanding with the people around us.
So it's not selfish to take care of our own needs. It's actually a way to be more helpful to others.
Exactly. And the more we see self-care as a necessary part of life, the more we create a culture that values well-being and encourages people to take care of themselves.
I'm totally on board with that.
Yeah.
All right, I think we've covered a lot today. Any final thoughts before we wrap up this deep dive?
Just a reminder that self-care is a journey. It's not about reaching some end point. It's about finding what works for you, being patient with yourself, and giving yourself credit for the progress you make along the way.
That's a great reminder. All right, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into self-care. We hope you've picked up some useful tips and techniques for putting your well-being first.
And remember, you deserve to feel your best. So go out there and take good care of yourself.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive. Thinking about all these self-care techniques we've talked about makes me wonder, do they change depending on what's going on in your life?
Oh, that's such a good point. And the source kind of touches on it, but it's worth digging deeper, right?
Yeah, right.
What works when you're super stressed out might not be what you need when things are calmer.
Exactly. If I'm going through some big life change or, tons of pressure at work, I might need to really double down on all those stress-reducing things we talked about.
Right.
But if things are pretty stable, maybe I can focus more on, the stuff that just makes me happy.
Yeah, I think it's all about tuning into what you need at that moment.
Right.
And adjusting your self-care routine. Maybe you try something new.
Uh-huh.
Or let go of something that's not working anymore. Or maybe you just change how often you do certain things.
Okay. Yeah, I like that. It takes the pressure off trying to find that perfect routine.
Right.
And makes it more about just figuring things out as you go.
Exactly. Self-care isn't one size fits all.
Right.
It's got to be tailored to you.
It makes me think about how what we need from self-care, it probably changes over time too, right?
Absolutely.
What helps you thrive in your 20s might not be the same in your 40s or 60s.
Totally. The source doesn't really get into the whole life stage thing.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to think about. As we get older, our priorities shift.
Right. Responsibilities change. Even our bodies and how we handle emotions.
Exactly. So our self-care has to adapt too.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe when you're younger, self-care is more about, I don't know, pushing limits, trying new things. But as you get older, it becomes more about prioritizing rest.
Maybe.
Cultivating meaningful relationships, finding those simple things that make you happy.
Yeah, I love that. It's about understanding that self-care is something we do our whole lives.
Yeah.
We're always learning, growing, adapting.
This has been such a good conversation. I feel like I have a whole new way of thinking about self-care now.
Me too.
It's not just about bubble baths and face masks, right?
Right.
It's about caring for your whole self.
Yes.
Body, mind, and spirit. And realizing that it's not a luxury, it's essential.
I couldn't agree more.
Well, on that note, I guess that wraps up our deep dive for today. Thanks for joining us, everyone. And until next time, remember to be kind to yourselves.
Okay.
And prioritize your well-being.
And keep exploring. You never know what new self-care practices you might discover.
That's true. See you next time for another deep dive.